Hello and welcome to Shutter Chats. I'm Jerry Puckett and this is Shutter Chat, and we are talking this week about the Leica IIIf. The IIIf, a very popular camera from the 1950s. Actually, it debuted in 1950 and lasted until about 1957 when it was replaced by the Leica IIIg camera, which is also a very sought after and very rare camera. But the IIIf, a very popular camera, probably a lot more of these around than a lot of the other Leica cameras. And one of the interesting facts about this camera is it's not one of those that you can actually open up the side panel here and then pop open the back and then load your film. It's a bottom loading camera, so you have to load the film camera through the bottom. Now I have film in this camera now, so I am unable to actually demonstrate this, but there are many videos that you can look at online that show you how to remove the bottom and then actually replace the film. There's also another little thing that you have to do as well with these cameras, and that is to cut an extra couple of inches at least of the leader to form the shape as shown on this template. This template here, by the way, is available. The old Leica ones, but this one is actually a more budget model, plastic one, a new one. I believe these are 3D printed if I remember correctly, but it will help you to cut the leader to fit the film into the camera when you load it. But a little bit about the Leica IIIf. What makes it so significant? Well, we know that Leica cameras are very expensive, and we know the Leica optics are very expensive. That's the lenses. And so if you want to get into it for maybe a few $100s, this is your option, the Leica IIIf, 35 millimeter. These are LTM or Leica thread mount cameras, meaning that they will accept any of the Leica thread mount camera lenses. You can find lenses for these cameras made by Voigtlander, Leica, and Canon, and so they're pretty interchangeable. This one here is a Leica collapsible 3.5 50 millimeter lens, and this one here is known as the Elmer lens, and they're not the best of the lenses, but it's not a bad lens at all. It's actually a very good lens, and I get very good sharp images. I've taken some street photography with this, some images, and I'll share those with you at the end of the video, and you can take a look at those and see what you think. But even with this Elmer 3.5 Leica lens, it is still a really good camera. This is one of the Elmer lenses that was actually made in the 1950s, and it has a lens coating on it which helps to reduce flare. But I would also really recommend that anytime you use one of these cameras that you use a lens hood. So make sure that you put a lens hood on there, and that will reduce the flare from the sun when it hits your lens and cause some of the the flaring on the photographs. So this is a retractable lens. You can get a Summicron lens, you can get a Elmer lens, and they are all just fine. They're great. This is a very pocketable camera. I like that you can just take this and put this in your car. If you have a backpack, you could put it in there as well. You can go on a hike, or or whatever, and you could still take great photographs with this camera. So it's a good option for street photography, just out and about photography. You focus like any other rangefinder. There's two windows on the back. The first window is going to be your rangefinder window, and that is where you're going to set your focus. You're going to bring the two images together and align them to make them into one image, and that's when your image is in focus. And then you're going to move your eye over to the next viewfinder, and that's your viewfinder where you're going to actually take the photograph. So it's a little different than some of the rangefinders where you just look through the same viewfinder and focus and compose the image. This one has two, so it's an earlier type of setup or arrangement. This one here will actually go 1/1000th of a second, so you can take photographs at a higher shutter speed. Some cameras only go to 1/500th of a second, some 1/250th, but this will go 1/1000th. So if it's a really bright and sunny day, you can really stop this down to like 1/1000th and capture some really good photographs even in bright sunlight. Without really having to deal with a lot of variances and changing different types of ISO films. I use Tri-X film, 400, Tri-X 400 Kodak film a lot of times, and this does very well with that, and it really reproduces the images very well. On the top of the camera, you can see here that there's a Your shutter dial is here. Your rewind or take up is here. Every time that you take a photograph and you click the shutter button here, you will need to advance by turning the advance wheel. This does not have a lever. This is a wheel. Again, an earlier camera, but still very reliable. These are very nice, solid brass cameras. They have two different shutter control wheels here. This one here is for any speed higher than 1/30th of a second, which goes to 1/1000th of a second. If you want to go to a lower shutter speed, anything from bulb setting, where it's wide open for as long as you would like to expose the image, to something about 1/30th of a second, then you're going to use what they call the slow shutter speed, the slow shutter speed dial right here. This is it right here. So you're going to take the top button, or the wheel, and then move it over to the slow shutter speed setting. That's 1/30th or less. And then you're going to turn the wheel here to get to whatever the lower shutter speed is that you would like to, photograph the image at. So again, it's a very useful feature. There's also the opportunity to use a flash with this camera. And I will say though, because this is a shutter curtain on here that uses the focal plane shutters basically, you're going to really not have a very lot of latitude when using your shutter. You're only going to use about, I think, about 1/30th of a second. So it's not, the sync speed is not very high on these cameras. But if you want to set it on a tripod or something and compose your image at something like 1/30th or 1/15th of a second, you could do that without any issues or problems. But if you're out and about and you don't have a tripod and you move your camera around, you can run into issues with a lot of blur, motion blur, and things like that, because your shutter is going to be open a lot longer, which is going to introduce any of the camera shake or movements. So you don't want that in your photographs. But all in all, the Leica IIIf, a great camera for street photography, just out and about shooting. Make sure that you have a lens hood to put on your lens, and a lens cap, and get one of these film trimming accessories, which will help. Now, you really don't maybe have to have one if you're really good at just cutting out the film to make sure that the leader is long enough to load into the camera. So that's always a possibility as well. There's a lot of different accessories for these cameras. You can get reloadable cartridges for the film, where you can do bulk loading into them. Leica made a lot of accessories. They made very good cameras. They're still serviceable today. Even these cameras, as old as they are still serviceable 100%. Where a lot of cameras you cannot get service for them or parts for them, but they're still available on these older cameras. So once you do get them serviced, then they do last you a long, long time, making sure that your lenses are nice and clean as well. But again, a good camera for street photography or just out and about photography. Just taking photographs of family and friends and things like that. That's really what these cameras are all about. So I'm going to leave you now with some photographs that were taken with this camera, and just take a look at them, see what you think. And I think you'll find that this is another camera that you might want to add to your bucket list of cameras that you will consider in your photography. Until next week, have a great week.